Hello, everyone. Lovely to see you all here today. Thank you so much for joining us. We know you are going to absolutely love this session that we have today. For those of you who have watched our webinars before, you will be very familiar with Andy and Maria. For those of you who have not, you guys are going to be in for a treat. So Andy is a very, very lovely chap who's very experienced in all things wellbeing for school leaders. You used to be president of the NAHT, no less. Is that right, Andy?
That's right. Back in 2018-19.
Wow. And now you are, I'm going to read it out so I get it right, the National Director of Wellbeing for Schools Advisory Service, of which we're very grateful because Schools Advisory Service are sponsors of our community platform. And you are so passionate about wellbeing, Andy. It's really lovely to see. So thank you so much for joining us. And then we also have Maria. For those of you who have listened to our podcasts or watched our webinars with Maria, you will be very familiar with Maria's very calming tone and very experienced knowledge about, looking after your heart health as a school leader. And you bring some really insightful science along with you, don't you?
Yeah, thank you, Lucy. Yeah, everything we do is grounded in science and research, so it's not kind of woo-woo out there.
Oh, it's brilliant. So thank you so much for joining us both. So just to let you know what's happening today, Andy and Maria are going to talk about why it's important for school leaders to look after their well-being. And I know, Andy, you did a fabulous session with us last week. All about, well-being. You yourself were a head teacher, so you completely understand that you've been there, you've lived and breathed it. And the session, if you missed it, everybody is in the library, so you can have a look at that and go back to that. But welcome to you both.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to sort of lead off, I think, before handing on to Maria. But we are very open to any sort of questions that you might have as we move through the presentation that we're going to give to you. Just to sort of complete the picture, really, in terms of my passion for wellbeing. I was a head for 17 years, and I really struggled at times during those 17 years with my own wellbeing, and I made decisions that prioritized my school ahead of my family sometimes, and my girls, who are now in their 20s, remind me of that, because your own kids are nothing if not honest with you in terms of your skills as a parent. But sometimes it does feel a little bit like you care for other people's children more than you do your own, or you've got more time for them than your own. So I now work for Schools Advisory Service, but I'm also on the national executive still for NAHT. So I hear lots of stories around poor wellbeing, and I work with school leaders on a day-to-day basis, and it scares the living daylights out of me. It's got so much tougher since I left headship back in Christmas 2019. It's a lot harder now. There's a lot more asked of schools, with less money and less people to do it. So I don't think there's ever been a time when self-care has been more important. And as Lucy said, I want to sort of segue into the presentation that I did last week, because there are lots of things in there that will help. I must admit, when I first met Maria, there's an awful lot of what Maria was talking about that really resonated with me, because I was part of a group of 4 heads who were mates in Blackpool. We'd go to all the meetings together. There's only one of us left as a head teacher in the town. The other 3 have left and are doing different things now. But all 4 of us have developed heart conditions of some form or another. Some from quite severe, needing surgical intervention. And in my case, last summer, I got to a point where my blood pressure was through the roof. And I'm sure the roots of that were in the years of me being a head teacher. And I won't go into the detail of all of that, because I'm sure Maria will explain all of that. But I just felt that what we were experiencing and what Maria was talking to me about in terms of heart health and what was going on scientifically, I guess, with my heart, was something that all head teachers should hear, because it's only by having the information in front of you that you're able to make the decisions that actually protect your heart going forward, not just for yourself, but for your family as well. And we work hard enough in the job as it is. We are owed a retirement, a happy, healthy retirement, and what Maria's going to talk about are the sort of foundations that you can put in place, and it's never too late to do this, to actually protect your heart health moving forward. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Maria.
Thank you, Andy. What a wonderful introduction. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'll share one personal story from me as well. I come from a very large family, and I have 6 siblings, and 4 of them were in education. And all of them left very young. My younger brother had a heart attack before the age of 50, required emergency surgery. Will never work again. Like, he wasn't able to go back to work. It was such a shock for our family, because we always think, oh yes, it's one of those things, and it happens to other people and happens in other families. But when all 4 of my siblings who were in education left early because of health issues and concerns, and just the overwhelming frustration and stress of being in the system, it was just awful. And that's really a big impetus for the work that I do. And with Andy's support, Andy's really given us a platform many times to talk about this work because of your personal concern about it. But what I will preface my talk with is that there is a lot of very good news. It's not all gloom and doom. There's a lot you can do, and we have a lot of evidence that it has a very practical impact on your heart health, but also on communication and relationships and all aspects of your leadership and management. So this talk really is about good news. So let's get started. Lucy, if you would kindly share this.
So I'll share your screen for you, Maria. And whilst we're doing that, if you've got any questions, please put them in the chat. We love questions, don't we, you guys? And that is what the whole point of the community is. We are a community, and we're called a community for that reason. We are all about looking after each other, supporting each other. So if you've got a question, feel free to ask. You can DM us privately if you'd rather do that. Put them in the chat. If you have an answer to one of the questions, feel free to share it. Let's share ideas together. Let's make it better for everyone. So you're going to love this session. I shall hand over to Maria. Thank you so much. See you in a bit.
Thank you, Lucy. Thank you. So I'll start just by introducing myself briefly. I'm Maria Brosnan. I'm the founder of Pursuit Wellbeing, and I'm a heart health and wellbeing specialist, a counsellor, a coach. And this is my partner, Dr. Carla Stanton. She was a GP, functional medicine doctor, and she's a specialist in the heart and heart rate variability research, which I'll explain a little bit more in a moment. And Carla is a dear friend, and she supports all of the work we do. She's an advisor and a great support in this, especially the research side of it. So what we know, and I'll start with a little tiny bit of bad news, but I promise you I'll turn that around very quickly. So what we know, as Andy mentioned, he's really concerned. We're all concerned. 89% of head teachers are chronically stressed. And by that, I mean waking up in the morning stressed, going through your day with that kind of feeling, waking up in the middle of the night with things worrying you and on your mind, and just that awful heavy feeling of unease or stress. This is a huge number. I mean, it's just astonishing, 89%. We also know that stress is an independent risk factor for coronary heart disease. And we know that coronary heart disease is the #1 cause of death in the UK and globally. And I say this to paint a picture that what we're talking about is not trivial. I know that during term time, there's a kind of just says, oh, we're stressed and it's just kind of normal. But just because it's normal, it doesn't mean that it's a fait accompli, that we have to accept that. And there's plenty we can do about it. I want to just talk about some of the stressors that I see. I've worked with many hundreds of head teachers now. I've talked to Andy and Lucy a lot about these things. So I'm just curious if these resonate with you. Please pop your comments in the chat. The SEND crisis feels like it's #1. This is a priority order of what I'm seeing, but I'm sure It's probably different for each of you, but pupil attendance is enormous, safeguarding pressures, high stakes inspections and accountability, crushing workload. It just feels never ending. You could work, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and you would still have plenty to do, I'm sure. So it's just enormous. Recruitment and retention, inadequate funding, behavior dysregulation with pupils, and dare I say sometimes with staff, difficult parental relationships, that seems to be increasing, loss of autonomy, overregulation, micromanagement. So I'm curious if these resonate, and if I've missed one, pop that in the chat as well. So what I want to do now is just kind of map all of those stressors and how they kind of build up over time, and how this level of challenge and stress affects your performance and your health. And so here on the y-axis, we're looking at your performance. And by that, I just mean your ability to do what you need to do during the day. In this session, we're really focusing on work, but you could encompass life outside of work as well. But for today, we'll just focus on your performance in work. And that goes from low to high. And along the bottom here, we're looking at the level of challenge you're facing. And again, that goes from low to high. We've broken it down into 4 zones, A, B, C, and D. And this red dotted line represents time. And that time could be, a day, a week, a year. For the purpose of this explanation, we're going to be looking at the first academic half term, coming out of the summer into the first academic half term. So imagine you're in zone A. It's the end of summer, late August, and you're starting to think about coming back to school. Your performance is relatively low, naturally, because you've been on holidays, so that makes perfect sense. But a little bit of healthy pressure might show up for you as starting to think more about school. You might feel it in your body in some way. You might have a little bit of sleeplessness. But we would consider this healthy pressure because that improves your performance, and it gets you out of your flip-flops, into your work gear, back into school. And as you welcome colleagues back, and you might have an inset day, and then you welcome students and pupils back, and you can see that your performance is starting to increase as you would expect, as the first kind of week or two of term. Then we arrive in zone B, and that's what we would call your optimal performance. This is where you're at your most efficient and most effective. It feels like everybody, all of the new staff know where they are, and they've got to know their pupils a little bit. All of the new pupils are relatively settled. Everybody kind of knows what's expected of them, and it feels like, right, you've still got a bit of energy left from the summer, and you're feeling on top of things. But of course, none of us knows what life has in store for us, and something is going to change and shift our perception. And that could be one great big thing. Perhaps, we all experienced the pandemic. That was huge. It could be the Ofsted call. It could be, a bereavement in your school. But typically what we see is the stacking up of lots and lots of smaller things that tip you into this next zone C, which we would describe as hyperreactive or fight or flight. And those things could be the stressors that we just talked about, HR issues, safeguarding issues, staff absence, a complaint from a parent, all of these things that ordinarily you could deal with. When they stack up and stack up and stack up, suddenly it feels like you're spinning lots of plates, and you're probably feeling terrified that you're going to drop the wrong one. And when that happens, it's usually because of a lack of a resource of some kind. Most commonly, that resource is time. It feels like you just don't have time to deal with everything. And, consequently, you're working all hours into the evenings and weekends. But time is almost universal that people feel there's not enough of it. Another resource that's frequently missing is money. It would be great if you could just have a TA in every classroom and all of the resources that you need. But that's not always possible because budgets are very, very tight. So money is a resource that's frequently missing. And another one is energy. Often we are just exhausted, and that we just don't have the energy to deal with all of the demands that life has on us. And so our perception shifts away from feeling kind of good and on top of things to here feeling not so good and feeling like potentially overwhelmed, anxious, frustrated, worried. And you can see here that your performance is starting to decline, but usually not so much that people would really notice. You're able to kind of keep the plate spinning, but it's probably feeling a little bit frantic, a little bit flappy is the word a lot of people use. Like it's just too much, and nothing is as efficient and effective as it usually is. None of us are superhuman, and we can't stay in this state for too long. If we can't get ourselves back from zone C into zone B by talking to somebody, by having a good night's sleep, by having a night off, and just, you know, going for a walk, the weather's warmer at this time of year. If we can't get ourselves back by the usual resources that help us get back there, we will end up in what we call zone D. And this is where we feel emotionally and physically exhausted. And a lot of you would recognize this, I'm sure, as we're coming towards the end of this half term. It's been a short half term, so you might not be feeling quite as exhausted, but it's also been a very busy one, so maybe you are. I'm curious. But this is where we just feel absolutely shattered. And that's when people in school start to say, your colleagues will start to say, oh, 3 weeks to go, 2 weeks to go, counting down. I'm sure every single one of you will know exactly how many days it is until the holidays. And so this is emotional and physical exhaustion. And I'd be curious if you're able to pop it in the chat, but even just take a moment to reflect, what zone are you in now? Are you in zone A, where you're feeling kind of on top of things, but you've got a bit more left in the tank? You know, you could be working a little harder. Unusual, but I've had this from time to time. Usually right at the beginning of term, I have to say. Are you in zone B, optimal performance, where you're feeling good, kind of on top of things? Zone C, hyperreactive fight or flight, or zone D? So just take a moment to reflect on that as I carry on. And what I'd like to point out here in zone D is what happens to your performance. And you can see it's declining very rapidly. And research shows that you are 3 times less effective when you're in zone D compared to zone B. And let's put an hourly rate on that. If you imagine a task that takes you an hour to do in zone B will take you 3 hours to do in zone D. And, you know, we could weave this whole thing into your workload. If you're in zone D and things are taking you longer to do, then it's adding to your workload. So if that's an incentive at all, my invitation to you is to do whatever you can, and we'll talk about this a little more, but to take care of yourself, to shut the laptop in the evening, to prioritize sleep, to take care of yourself, because what that will do effectively is to buy you time. By getting yourself out of here, out of this side of the chart, back over into zone B, you're buying yourself time. So if that's an incentive at all to help you take care of yourself, I hope it serves in that way. If we can't get out of zone D, and frequently we'll limp into the holidays, and everybody knows in your family just to leave you alone and let you sleep and catch up, and then, you know, you'll feel better after 2 or 3 days. And that, by the way, explains why so many head teachers, but also staff, get sick in the holidays, because you're holding it together for weeks at a time, and then kind of crash out. But if we're not able to take care of it, this is what leads to the damage and breakdown of health. And this is burnout. And I've seen so many people on the brink of that or recovering from that. And it's a devastating place to be. If you've ever experienced that yourself, you'll know it. It's absolutely overwhelmingly exhausting, despairing. It's a terrible place to be. But this is what stress is. I'm sure you know homeostasis. It's when all of the systems and functions in your body are working well. Allostasis is when they start to break down on a cellular level. And this explains, to some degree, why stress has such a strong impact on your heart. And we go into a lot of detail in our training, the physiology of that, but I want you to just understand that this is why when we live in these states, and most heads do during term time, there's a lot of wear and tear. Let's just say that. But what we're looking to do is to build resilience. And I'm sure that all of you would have slightly different definitions of resilience. Often it revolves around grit and hanging in there and bounce back ability and getting back up again. What we would define resilience as is your ability to prepare for, adapt to, and recover from the inevitable challenges that you're facing in life. And I'll say that again, your ability to prepare for, adapt to and recover from challenges. And the area that I see most heads don't do as well as they might, that could help, is prepare. And what can you do in your daily life? And we'll talk about this again in a moment. What can you do to prepare for the inevitable challenges that you're facing? And that is taking care of yourself, fundamentally. So the question is, what happens here for you? What tips you over from zone B to zone C? And crucially, what gets you back to this more efficient, optimal state? So you might want to take a moment or two to reflect on that, maybe even on the drive home this afternoon, but just start to think of this, because every head teacher I've ever worked with, and it's been many hundreds now, I'm probably close to 1,000, this is a pattern. It's like a roller coaster that we go on, every half term we kind of crash out at the end. For some people, that's every week. It feels a little bit like this, but I want to encourage you to reflect what happens here and what can I do to minimize that all throughout your working day and your working week. So I want to just define well-being, because it's one of those words that we all have a working definition of, and we all have an idea what it means, but I want to just share our definition of that might be interesting or useful for you. So firstly, we have a very holistic view of well-being, and it's affected. There's two aspects to it, and I'll start with one that's not on this slide, and that is, it's how you feel and how you function. So do you feel relatively upbeat, optimistic, on top of things like we saw in zone B, or not? And are you able to do all of the things that you need to do in your working day or in your wider life? I worked with a head recently, and she wasn't able to function at all on Saturdays. So she went through that crash every week, crashed out on Saturday, wasn't able to function at all with 2 children. She just had stayed in bed all day, kind of managed to get up on Sunday, and then went through the whole thing again. So how do you feel and how you function? So that's the first check-in. The second one is by looking at your health in these 4 domains. So your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. And by spiritual, I mean how you feel about your life and your work and your meaning and purpose. It could mean religious to you, but this is the context that we mean. And they are all completely interdependent. And we never, ever talk about mental health without talking about all of the others. And I'll give you a simple example. Imagine your physical health. Imagine you haven't slept well and you're exhausted. The next day, you're much more likely to be emotionally reactive. Research shows up to 60% more emotionally reactive, mentally much more rigid, or catastrophizing, ruminating, black and white thinking, it's my way or the highway. So mentally we're affected. Spiritually, you might be thinking, what's the point? I'm going to check the pension pot. I can't do this any longer. Like, it's just too hard. So the opposite to that, of course, is if you have slept well and you feel much more emotionally buoyant, resilient, mentally able to roll with the punches a bit more, spiritually, you really recognize the value of what you do, the absolute gift that you give to everybody in your school, and it feels very purposeful to you. So these are completely interdependent. What you do for one, either positively or negatively, will affect them all. And this, crucially, is balanced by 2 important things. Number one is the level of challenges that you're facing, all of the stressors that we talked about a moment ago. But what balances this out, I hope you can see this little seesaw here, are the resources in your life. You could call that self-care. You could call that whatever, taking care of yourself. But what we call it are resources. How do you resource yourself? And when that's relatively dynamically balanced, your little well-being guy is relatively happy. But of course, for most people, the seesaw looks much, much more like this. And we are biased towards looking for trouble, especially as school leaders. You're constantly, understandably, on the alert, looking out for trouble. But when the challenges stack up like this, the resources tend to fall off. You know, the friend that you really enjoy having coffee with or chatting with on the phone, or your, you know, friends and family that you really get a lot of joy and energy from. We stop seeing those. We stop those engagements. Maybe exercise kind of falls away because you need to spend more time in the evening working. Lots of these resources fall away during term time. And so my question is, how can we effectively add resources to keep the wellbeing seesaw balanced? And it might seem counterintuitive to think, I don't have time for that. But if you just look at the law of physics here, adding resources helps. And I'll give you a really simple example here. Imagine that you're exhausted, but you've been invited to, you know, a birthday dinner or something like that. And it's a special event. It might be a parent, or it might be one of your own kids or partners. And it's one of those events that you really can't get out of. And you drag your heels and you kind of go, and you really, really don't want to go, but you go. And you have a lovely time, right? And you've seen people there that you might not have seen for a while, and you have a really lovely evening, and you come back and your perspective is different. Your perception changes by adding resources. I was speaking at a conference on Friday, and I gave this example, and a head in the audience said, that literally happened to me this week. I had an uncle fly in, and he was at Heathrow for a couple of hours, and I'd agreed to go and see him, and I really didn't want to, but I hadn't seen him for over 10 years. And it was so joyful, and I just felt so happy, and my kids got to meet him, and it was just a fantastic thing for us to do. But he said, I would have done anything not to go because I was so tired. So I'm sure you can relate to those kinds of things, where resourcing yourself, going for a run, going for a walk, chatting to a friend, all of those things that we do, and they can be small. They don't need to be great big things, but small things will gradually shift that balance of your well-being seesaw, and it has a dramatic effect on your health and well-being. And my question is, why is this so important to you? Just pause just for 5 seconds. Why does this matter to you? And I hope you can see that even one reason could be that you're healthier and happier, but that you're much more efficient. When you're well, when you're in zone B, everything in life is a lot easier for you. I'm just going to check the screen. It looks like there are some comments. I think we do. I struggle with. Thank you. How on earth do I give myself time when the day's so busy and I feel guilty? Oh, sorry, something else has come in. I feel guilty for taking some time out. Help. Such a great question, and a question that I hear frequently. It seems counterintuitive, but even taking a short amount of time, I'm not talking about hours in the day. I'm talking about, can you go for a short walk? Can you just have a quick phone call with a friend? I hope you can see by adding resources, it will shift the balance even a little bit. I think we all do. Guilt is a natural reaction. I hear from many school leaders. Absolutely, Andy. Down to the pressure. I'll carry on. Thank you. Yeah, I'll carry on. Great. I want to show that there are 3 ways that you can actually check your stress levels and the health of your heart. And when we work with head teachers, we teach them how to monitor themselves. And this is what we see coming back through our dashboard. So the first way we can see stress affecting us, sorry, something just popped up on the screen, is our resting heart rate. So the normal healthy range is between 60 and 80 beats per minute. And I'm sure you can relate to that when you're feeling stressed, that your heart speeds up. So what we're looking for is a resting heart rate of about 60 to 80 beats per minute. This is a slide. This is the data that comes through to our dashboard from head teachers. So this is a head, and you can see it's a little bit difficult to see, but this is 70, 80, 90, 100 beats per minute. So this head teacher's heart rate is a little bit high. Interestingly, what happens when you do the practices that we teach you how to do, that naturally comes down. I worked with a head recently, and his average resting heart rate was 110 beats per minute. And within 2 months of doing these practices, he got that down to about 80. So it's possible to affect these things that feel completely out of our control. The second thing is known as heart rate variability, HRV. And this is the beat-to-beat difference in your heart rate. Most people think that your heart beats like a metronome, and it really doesn't. It's always speeding up and slowing down. And if you want to do a quick little experiment now, just take your own pulse and prove it to yourself. Just put 2 fingers underneath the thumb and check in with your pulse, and just slow your breathing down a little bit. And as you breathe in and out through your nose, just a little bit more slowly and deeply than normal, see if you can feel what's happening to your heart rate. Is it speeding up or slowing down on the in-breath or the out-breath? Is there any difference? Might be a little bit difficult to tell, but see if you can feel that. And often you can feel it in bed at night. When you lie down tonight and take your pulse, or you can maybe just feel it, it will be much more marked. But your heart naturally speeds up on the in-breath and slows down on the out-breath. And I'll show you what that looks like. So as you breathe in, your heart rate speeds up. As you breathe out, your heart rate slows down. So with every single breath you take, your heart rate is responding to it. And you can see here, this heart rate variability is tiny. So it's only speeding up by 1 or 2 beats per minute. And this is what we'd call low heart rate variability. And this is the single most accurate predictor of your heart health. This was a head I was working with, and I was on the phone immediately. This is alarming, because if you imagine if this got any lower and lower and lower, we'd end up with a flat line. So this is the single most accurate predictor of the health of your heart. To compare that, this is high heart rate variability. So this is when the heart is speeding up by 10, 20, 30 beats per minute and slowing down. And what this does is shows the capacity of the heart. As we get older, our heart rate variability naturally declines. It's a natural part of our aging process. And you can see the difference between, say, a child and grandma running up the stairs. You can see that they have different capacity, and that's normal, but we can do a lot to impact that and to influence that. And most of our participants can at least double their heart rate variability, which, as we just saw, is the single most accurate predictor of the health of your heart. And just looking at this, without knowing anything else about it, would you predict that this person is calm and relaxed, or a little bit stressed? I think we can all see that there's a little bit of stress happening there. And that leads to our third point, what you can see in the heart. That's known as cardiac coherence. It's the regularity, it's the rhythm of the heart, so heart coherence. And that just means the pattern it makes. So here is a lovely in-breath, speeding up, slowing down. And what you're looking at here is called cardiac coherence. And this is what we teach people to achieve. When you can achieve this, it's effectively the off switch to the stress response. I'll leave it there. If you've got any more questions about this, pop them in the chat, or you can contact me via Lucy. But I want to just end this part of the talk, or this talk, by 3 levels of resourcing practices, and just give you some tips on what you can do. Back to the question that was in the chat, like, what can I do? I don't have time. One time in your day that really needs your attention is when there's an SOS. You know, you might have had a difficult conversation with a parent. They might have been yelling or being very upset. A child might have become very dysregulated, and they're, throwing chairs around the room, and you need to do something to regain balance in the moment. So just jot down these 3 levels of resources, and then have a think about what you can do on your own and what you can do with other people. I'm going to share some examples in a moment, but imagine that you're at school and something has happened. What can you do, or what do you do? Because I'm sure you've got a whole raft of things that help you, but it could be getting up and going outside for a quick breath of fresh air, getting a glass of water, a cup of tea, or something you can do with somebody else. Go and have a chat with somebody else. Ask for advice or support, or just get it off your chest. So think of things you can do on your own or with other people as an SOS reset. The second level is, what can you do as a daily practice? What are some consistent habits that build resilience over time? And I want to refer back to what Andy said right at the beginning of the talk, when he said he was having blood pressure issues last year, probably as a legacy effect of 20 years in leadership, and how important it is to build in regular practices now, to resource yourself now, no matter what age you are, start now. And they could be things like some exercise, whatever that is for you. And that could be things like dance or some kind of movement classes or something, but find a way to move your body every day. It could be all kinds of things. In fact, I've got a slide to show you some ideas, but build in, even if it's just a few minutes a day, a consistent habit that will build your resilience and strength, health and well-being over time. And the third thing is, how can you find time for some deep rest once in a while? So you probably do this in the holidays, take some time out just to rest, but being intentional about renewing and restoring and revitalizing yourself deeply. So here are some examples So I just want you to consider what you can add in each category individually and with others. So here are some examples. I'll read some of them out, comments that I just kind of put on a little spreadsheet here from head teachers that I've worked with. So some of them are things you do at work, or some you can do at home. Walk outside, have a cup of tea, read a book, have a healthy snack handy, walk your dog, listen to some music, close the office door. That is a great suggestion. Gently shake or move your body. Essential oils, just have a little diffuser. It's fantastic for changing your state or your energy. Things you can do with other people might be talk to somebody, ask for help, have a laugh with somebody, just being around others, go to the staff room or go down to reception, or see the children go out on the playtime. A head I was talking to last week was just sat outside on the playground at playtime, and just children would come up and chat and she just hang out with them. Meet up with people, go for a walk and talk, have a walking meeting if you can, perhaps brainstorm, carry out a random act of kindness. So there's just some ideas you can do in the moment. Second, daily practices. Some people love to just pot around in the garden. I have to say I love that myself. Pilates, yoga. You can do very simple, quick classes at home. Running, walking the dog, some kind of mindfulness or meditation practice. Nia, I love this one. This is really quick dance classes. Nia.com. I don't have an affiliation with that, but I was a member for quite some time. And you can just say, I've got 5 minutes. And they have 5-minute classes or 10-minute, and you can put in the time that you've got, and they've got classes that will fit that time. It's really great. Cooking, listening to music, etc. I won't go through every single one, but there's lots of ideas there. And some deep rest, an overnight stay away by yourself, if that feels like a good idea. Some people, that sounds like heaven. Some that would be impossible or awful. A spa day, a massage, spring clean, sorting, just going through stuff can be really revitalizing. Some kind of craft class, anything with the phone off is a common response. Having a retreat or sabbatical, spa day, holiday, weekend away with friends, pottery painting, weekend away with the family. So lots of ways you can intentionally rest. So I hope that was helpful. Please get in touch if you've got any questions at all, and I will thank you for that and hand back to Lucy.
That was amazing. Thank you so much. That was really, really lovely. Thank you, Maria. We always love your sessions. Should we bring Andy back in as well? Do you want to come in, Andy? I'll let you
back in. I'll take it. There we go.
There we are. But no, super helpful. Thank you to Maria. So many good suggestions for looking after our well-being, and so important to do so. We've had some really lovely feedback. Annie says that she's really found this session really helpful. So thank you so much. We've had some great questions as well from the community. How on earth do I give myself time? I know we answered that, which is that question, I have to say, does sum up what a lot of our community say every single day. Like, where on earth do I find my 5 minutes? How do I go and get a cup of tea? How do I go and do this when people are constantly knocking on the door and all of those sorts of things? Oh, we just had another question. What should your HRV be?
Perhaps and it's a difficult question to answer because it's different for everybody. So I wouldn't say that it should be 20 beats per minute or 40 beats per minute. And if you have like an Apple Watch or a Fitbit or something like that, they have proprietary technology that's different than the technology we use. So I couldn't give you a number there, but what we're aiming for is higher rather than lower. And what that shows you is that your heart has the capacity to speed up. For example, if you're at school and the fire alarm goes off. You want to be able to get up and move and run and deal with it. Fortunately, it's a false alarm, so you can come and sit down again, and you want your heart rate to settle very quickly. So heart rate variability shows the capacity of the heart. So the higher, the better within normal, healthy bounds. But I can't give you an absolute number on that, Annie. I hope that's helpful.
Superb. Thank you. No, really, really helpful. And you know, as Andy said, I wish I'd had this when I was a school leader. You know, we've both been there, haven't we, Andy? And you're just so in the zone of leadership, and you don't always focus on, well, actually, what about me today? What am I doing for my well-being today? And you literally don't. You just go from one day to the next, don't you? Really.
That's right. And it was interesting, that comment in the chat about guilt, because that was that came up again. I did a training session with a governing board on Thursday last week, Thursday evening, and the member of staff who was on the governing board kept coming back to that point about feeling guilty about taking time, and I think that's a really complex area. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the job is never done. So unlike most jobs where you can say, I'm finishing at 4:30, parcel it off for the day, that's it, I won't see it till 8:30 tomorrow morning. Being a teacher or a school leader is not like that. And you're always mindful of those children you work with, the homes they go to, the support they get at home or otherwise. So you're constantly churning that over. And if you don't, and you can't meet those demands, which are unmeetable in terms of workload, that leads to a sense of imposter syndrome, and somehow you're letting them down. And it's also tied into the nature of vocation, and that we come into this profession to make a difference rather than make a load of money. One of the things that one of the tools I've developed, which I think is a sort of 5-step process, might be worth just sharing. And Maria's talked about it as well. So the first thing is, on the fingers of one hand, first thing is on your thumb, which is the biggest, most powerful digit on your hand. The most powerful thing that you have is the ability to say pause and stop. And unless you do that, everything else that I'm just going to mention actually isn't going to work. So concentrate on the power of a pause. Then look at impact, and take some time to look at the impact that the job is having on you, and talk to people who know you well about the impact the job's having on you, because it may well be that you're even changing the person who you are and becoming a different person, and you might not notice that, but other people will. The third thing is to recalibrate the relationship with the job when you've done that reflection, and that's about saying this much and no more. Okay. The fourth thing is putting a plan in place, which is that planning for, this is when I'm going to finish, I'm going to work till this time and no more. And then the fifth thing is adhering to it and sticking to it. You know, all the research I've done suggests that 5-step model, if you adhere to all of those things, you've actually got a quite a useful toolkit to manage some of that guilt and that overwork.
I love that. And you can tap into that, can't you, when days become very challenging? Because we've all had those days where you go into work thinking you're going to do one thing, and then everything that could possibly go wrong, does go wrong, and it all goes wrong at the same time. But if you can just take a pause and look at the impacts that the stress of that situation is having on you, and reflect on that, and then, you know, consider your toolbox, look at your breathing, for example, as Maria's just been talking about. Think about how you can control your stress level at that point. I think that's lovely. A really nice idea, Andy, especially as we've all got a hand, you know, to like remind ourselves to like focus on. So thank you so much. Really, really helpful. You can all see why Andy and the team at SAS are our sponsors for the platform. We don't work with every company. We are very proud of the companies that we do work with. and you can see the high quality service that they offer. For those of you who can't find the details, I shall show you now. I shall present the screen. How to find SAS's details on the platform. So if you head down the menu tab at the side, here is their special tab, and you have the Schools Advisory Service information here, all about staff absence insurance. And on this side, you also have your amazing Happier, Healthier You program, Andy. I think it's great, looking after the well-being of school leaders. So if at any point you think, oh, I'd really like to find that information again, head over to the side menu. There's a special space, especially for SAS, with all the contact details in and the information you need. Andy, do you have like an email address that they can contact you on?
Yeah, I mentioned when we did the webinar last week that we do run a wellbeing program for school leaders. Now, normally, if a school has a policy with us, we'll allow 3 people to do that for free. But if you've not experienced that and it's something you'd like to do, we can offer you a license to do that, 1 per your school. And if that's you, then do get in touch. My email address is andy.mellor, MELLOR, I'll put it in the chat, at uk-sas.co.uk. And I'll pop that in there now.
Like this one? Is that correct, Andy? I'll put a banner up.
Yes.
Oh, good. That's it. Cool. So there's Andy's email address. Please do get in touch. It's lovely to have you guys on the platform. And Maria, your content is always super inspiring. It's so helpful, and it's so lovely to have you join us today. Have you got an email address, Maria, that anybody can contact you?
I do. Thanks, Lucy. Mine is maria@pursuit-wellbeing.com, and I just popped that in the chat as well. So,
cool.
Yeah, please get in touch if there's anything we can do. We work largely with school leaders, but increasingly that's broadening out to SLT and then staff, and we've just started our second pilot for 2000 sixth form students. So our program is really reaching down into the younger years, because the leaders that we work with say everybody should know this, everybody should know how to regulate themselves and understand what stress is, and that's my mission in life, to understand it and to manage it in a skillful way.
Oh, superb. Well, thank you so much, you two. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here. We hope that's helped you all. Thank you for your lovely feedback. And we know you're all going to have a nice day now, because you've got tools in your toolbox to look after you during the day. So no matter what happens, we're all okay. All right. So have honest. So we hope you enjoy your day, and please leave us any feedback. Tell us your suggestions, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.